Hello, everyone. Welcome to Platform. I'm incredibly excited to welcome Alex Rampell, who's a partner at Andreessen Horowitz and a member of the Plaid board. Welcome, Alex. How are you doing?
Good. It's great to be here.
I heard you just came back from Europe. How was the trip?
It was good. I'm on the board of a company called Wise. It used to be called TransferWise, and it's in London. Used to go there every quarter, and have not gone for about 2.5 years. So it was very good to come back. And I mean, just a lot of things are just better in person. And I was also, we kind of live in a little bubble here in California, I think. It was interesting to see how back to normal, at least from my perception, everything was in London relative to San Francisco.
So this was your first trip back to Europe since the start of the pandemic?
Yes. Yeah. The last time I was there was, I want to say, January or February of 2020. Well, and that was right at the precipice of the end. And then this was the first one since.
I'm glad you had a good trip. I think before we jump in, we'd love to talk a little bit just about your background. For those in the audience that may be unfamiliar with Andreessen, can you just share a little bit more about the firm and specifically what you do there?
Sure. So the firm was started in 2009 out of a little financial crisis that happened back then. And it was founded by Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz. And they had both been entrepreneurs. And a lot of times, for many years prior, venture capital had always been not the dark arts of finance, but it's like somebody who went to business school who was really good at Microsoft Excel that might have worked at a private equity firm. Oh, they might as well do venture capital as well, kind of more Excel-driven modeling. And Ben and Mark had both been entrepreneurs. Ben had started the company called Opsware, which was successfully sold to HP, and Mark famously started Netscape, which kind of kicked off the internet boom in the 90s. And they wanted to build a firm for entrepreneurs, kind of by entrepreneurs, and doing things that they wish they had as entrepreneurs. And a lot of that was just reinvesting fees, because venture firms earn fees, just like any other business has fees you earn fees. We earn fees from managing capital from LPs, but we invest the fees into doing things for our entrepreneurs and for the companies like recruiting, marketing, and kind of building networks that hopefully inure to the benefit of our portfolio companies and also the firm. So that was kind of the idea. We've grown a lot since. We manage about $35 billion now, have about 400 people, so have grown a lot since when I joined in 2015. I run our fintech team as part of the venture fund. And fintech, when I joined, I used to joke, was selling tech to Finns. That's what fintech kind of meant, and not Finns in Finland, speaking of Europe, but kind of financial services companies. Fintech is not a new term, but once upon a time, fintech used to mean like companies like FIS or Fiserv were fintech companies. They're selling software to banks, or TSYS was a fintech company. And at the time, I had just come off of, I started the company which I sold to Visa, started another company called The Firm. And the firm, Andreessen Horowitz, was like, hey, why don't you do things in financial services? And I was like, it seems kind of small. I don't know how big fintech's. I love fintech, but it seems like a little niche area. I have lots of other interests. But obviously, I think the size and scale of the growth of fintech has exceeded anybody's expectations back in 2015, including and especially my own. It's kind of amazing seeing how every company across the world has now become a fintech company.
I mean, it's certainly been an amazing time in fintech, broadly speaking. You mentioned Wise. What are some of the other companies that you've invested in the fintech space besides Wise and Plaid?
Well, this is the thing. Fintech has largely changed in scope. So once upon a time, it was like Lending Club was a fintech company. Or every PFM, personal finance manager, was a fintech company, as well as infrastructure around them. So real estate has become a big area. So I did a company called Open Door, Divvy Homes, Fly Homes, Loft in Brazil. Bunch of companies in the kind of direct-to-consumer space. So there's a company called Earnin, which is an earned wage access company. A company called Propel, which helps people on food stamps. Many companies in infrastructure. Not me in particular, but like amongst our team. So there's a company called Centrelink. When I was at a firm, we almost got decimated by fraud. And it was a particular type of fraud called synthetic identity fraud. So there was a team there that basically solved that problem. I consider that a fintech infrastructure company, kind of solving problems for other financial institutions. So lots of companies, largely between, if I were to kind of categorize it, there's infrastructure, which kind of serves everybody. That's why Plaid is such a special company. There are vertical SaaS companies, which, what is a vertical SaaS company? I'm sure everybody here has heard of Square, obviously. Square does payment processing for everybody, amongst other products. There's also a company called Toast, which is effectively an operating system for a restaurant. It processes your payments, it might make you a loan, but it runs your restaurant. And there's a company like that for the HVAC space called Service Titan, or there's a company like that for if you're making a movie called Wrapbook. How do you pay your staff and manage everything? And those are called vertical software as a service companies that now increasingly monetize via fintech. So that's another big category. Another big category, as I mentioned, is real estate. Another big category is, I kind of like broadly describe it as things that banks don't do. So banks don't allow you to sell equity in your home. Like it's a new category. Or banks don't loan to people in sub-Saharan Africa. That's a new category. So like there's this whole area. It's often challenging competing with a bank if you're doing something like lending because the bank is going to have lower cost of capital. And for all of the flaws of banks and kind of, some of them are very forward-looking, but some of them are very branch-centric and not forward-looking. They're not necessarily experimenting with new things that are internet-driven, and there are a lot of companies that do. So I kind of think of like things banks do, things banks don't do. Insurance is a big category, and infrastructure, vertical SaaS, and real estate. Those are kind of the main areas that we focus on.
I mean, that's an amazing breadth of companies. Like when you make investments, like how do you think about kind of evaluating whether or not you want to put money in?
Well, there's a saying which I'm fond of, which I've probably overused, and you've probably heard me overuse as well, which is that the battle between every startup and incumbent is whether the startup gets the distribution before the incumbent gets the innovation. And this is true for everything. I mean, it's true for, look how many things Facebook has copied and destroyed. Not destroyed, I don't mean that as a negative, well, I guess it is negative if you're the company being destroyed, but it's like, ooh, like that Snapchat stories thing is a good idea, like let's make that ours, and then boom, you've got Instagram stories. But generally speaking, I think this is doubly or triply true for financial services, because if you think about consumer-facing financial services, there's this layer of trust that you have to have, which is so much more important than if it's like some little app that makes recommendations for names for your new dog, where I'm not uploading information about myself, I'm not giving you unfettered access to my financial transactions, I'm just figuring out names for my dog. If I'm trying to do something which is in financial services land, like I'll give you a great example of what I mean between innovation versus distribution. Vanguard, I believe, is the largest asset manager for retail investors in the US. I think they manage about $6 trillion. And robo-advisors are a really, really good idea, objectively speaking. Like, why should you pay somebody to do that? And Vanguard's very, very focused on lowest fees. So when things like Wealthfront came out, which were the first Wealthfront, Betterment, many others, great, great products, will they get trillions of dollars of AUM before the guy that's out there with trillions of dollars of AUM gets a robo-advisor? And it took Wealthfront, Wealthfront grew a lot. They were eventually successfully acquired, but like they were not able to get the distribution, in this case the distribution being the customers, meaning the AUM, before Vanguard got not trillions of dollars, they already started with that, before they got themselves a robo-advisor. And generally speaking, like this is the danger of going and competing with incumbents around things around money, which is the incumbents might be slower than the startups, but going back to your question of like what we look for, the number one thing in my mind is like, how are you going to get distribution? Like, can you build a product? That's very helpful. Do you have some insight around something that you've learned through hook or by crook, or like being in the coal mines, you figure out like, this is really hard. I've spent 10 years on this problem. I and only I've got the secret around what I'm going to build. It can be replicated, but I've just spent more time working on this than anybody else. That's all necessary but insufficient, table stakes, if you will. The really hard thing after that is how am I going to get distribution? Because there are a lot of companies that build the world's most beautiful product, and they unfortunately, and this is the kind of stuff that we try not to invest in, is best product, they got to spend all their money on Google ads and Facebook ads, and the best fintech investments therefore become Google stock and Facebook stock, which is not what we're primed to do. We're not public market investors. We're meant to invest in startups. So, is there, like, and I'll give you an example of a company that I really love that's done this. There's a company called Propel. It makes an app called Providers. It helps people on food stamps. They have about, over 5 million active users. And they figured out this. It turned out nobody was advertising or reaching people that were on a program called SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is known colloquially as food stamps. And people just told their friends, this thing is better. It's just very, very rare to have this kind of word of mouth phenomenon in financial services. You don't, wow, I love getting this mortgage. You should get a mortgage with those guys too. Ooh, I loved investing my money with this wealth manager. You should use that guy too. It happens from time to time, but you don't grow to millions and millions of people that way in financial services typically. Facebook grew that way, but it's not as common. So if we find something that looks like that, it's really magical. And then a lot of the things that we invest in that are selling to enterprises, businesses, the real question is, how do you get your first 5 customers? And it sounds trivial, but the challenge is you tend to over-design. Like, how do you know that you're not consulting versus building a product? And if you have one customer and you build something exactly for that one customer, it might not be applicable for customer number 2. Like, imagine Toast. I'm building tools for restaurants, and my Uncle Joey has a restaurant. I'm going to build every tool that Joey wants, and shoot, Joey's stuff actually has no applicability for like 3 or 4 or 5 other restaurants. So you kind of know you've got something working. If you have a disparate group of customers that seemingly don't have that many things in common, you don't have to keep customizing things. It's just like everybody can use the same output. But the number one thing, going back to your question, is kind of innovation versus distribution. Is there like a concrete plan that you have to get distribution at scale without, again, all of the money that goes in just going out the door on Google and Facebook?
Yeah, on your Wealthpoint example, I bank with Schwab, and so I remember them doing the same thing, just kind of having a knockoff solution that they brought to market and quickly building kind of AUM there themselves. One of the things I always loved about working with you is just the enthusiasm you bring to everything, and I think clearly the audience is getting a flavor of that today as well. If we're going to just tie to that, what is it that you most love about your job?
Well, I think some people love producing a product, and I like that too. And I joke with my kids. I have 2 kids. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they have a hard time understanding what I do because, at least pre-COVID, like most of what I would do is just have coffee with people and like trade ideas. And it's like, what did you do today, Dad? And I was like, well, I had coffee with this person and that person and that person. It's like, that's a lot of coffee. So that was correct. I do drink a lot of coffee.
Hot chocolate when we get together, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or tea. It kind of mellow it out a little bit, or it becomes alcohol sometimes towards 5 p.m. But I actually like context switching. I think the most fun part about this job for me is that before I started here, I had started a number of different companies, and it's very, very useful to actually see what's working at 2 companies that are not competitive at all, completely different industries, but it's like, ooh, one way of organizing a sales team is this, right? Or I saw something in a consumer-facing company that actually might be really, really relevant for what's happening in B2B sales. So you just kind of learn, or like, wow, like I invested in a company in Brazil. I had no idea they did things this way in Brazil. I had no idea that things could work this way. And then you're able to actually apply that to a company in a totally different country. So I really like the context switching. And then I just feel like I learn something every day because my job is basically to give away money to people that are smarter than I am. And that's a lot of fun. So, and I like meeting people that are smarter than I am because I just learn so much. So it's a fun job, but it's not for everybody. And that, like, the only downside is, relative to being an operator or an entrepreneur, there's a saying that's oft used, which is the highs are higher, the lows are lower if you're actually building something yourself. And that's 100% true. I can speak and testify to that 100 times over. So you don't have, like, when you guys release a product, it must be so much fun. It's like, all right, here's a product, like the reception, the positive reception that you get from consumers that say, like, wow, I love this product, it changed my life. And like, my product is money, I give you money, and then hopefully, but like, it's not the same level, it's like one level removed. But I still find it's a lot of fun, you learn a lot, and I'm 7 years in and still going strong.
That's definitely part of what we do here at Platform, right? Like, just like the excitement and pride of our teams when we launch things that we know can help customers and consumers kind of get an even better experience. Like, that's an amazing experience. Maybe changing gears a bit, obviously the markets have made some pretty dramatic moves in the last couple of weeks. And I'll keep it broad to start, but we just just love your overall perspective on what you're seeing in the public markets, but specifically as it pertains to a lot of the public fintechs.
Yeah, it's certainly been rough. I can look at my Apple stocks chart and see lots of red depression for the last few weeks. I will say I've lived through a couple of these cycles. It reminds me the most, frankly, of 2000, 2001, where you have some things that are up, because 2008, 2009, like the world was ending. Like there was a, not consensus around that, but it's like, remember Goldman Sachs had to get emergency bridge financing from the US government. I mean, it was really, really bad. Versus 2000, 2001, just a lot of valuations got disconnected from fundamentals. And a lot of that is like, okay, it's a new paradigm, everything's going to change, the internet is going to change the world. Everything was right, it just got a little bit ahead of where things actually were. Like not that many people actually used the internet in 2000. So you had a world in which things crashed 80, 90%. I mean, even really, really good companies like Amazon, I think had like a 95% drawdown from peak to trough. But like, even if you had bought at the peak of Amazon in March of 2000, which was the then peak, it was still a great company. It just took a while for, again, eventually the fundamentals got ahead of the valuation back then, right? Like now, like look how strong of a company Amazon is. Nobody thought it would be worth over $1 trillion. So I think we're in a similar situation right now, which is obviously rough if you're building a company. But if you have a very, very strong company with, I mean, ultimately I'm almost old-fashioned this way, even though I'm in the venture capital space. Every company fundamentally is worth the present value of future profits. Like that's sometimes you can get valued as a Picasso, which Picasso is just supply and demand. It's like, okay, how many people want to look at how many people are buying the Picasso? How many Picasso? One Picasso, 20 buyers. Price acts accordingly. But the kind of methodology which is old-fashioned is like, okay, you're going to produce $100 million of free cash flow a year for the next 20 years. What is that worth today? Like apply a discount accordingly, and then boom, here's what you're worth. So that's the floor. Right? I mean, if it goes below the floor, it's a screaming buying opportunity, theoretically. And I think right now we're just in this situation where it's like once upon a time, there was this arbitrage almost where it's like you invest in a private company and then it's almost inevitably worth more money as a public company. Therefore, everybody wanted to invest in private companies. Now you've got this kind of crazy situation where it's like private companies are worth more than public companies. So like, therefore, I don't want to invest in a private company if it's going to come out the other side even worth less than what I paid for it. That makes sense. So I think this will take some time to I mean, I'm not a macro economist. I have no idea where things are going or what things look like. But again, I think what can never go wrong is companies are worth present value of future profits. How much people will pay for Picassos change from time to time, but present value of future profits is a little bit more algorithmic, if you will. So, but I do think, just remembering my own experiences in 2000, 2001, like it could be a rough ride. And a lot of what I'm advising companies that I work with is like, make sure you've got 2 years of runway. Because if you don't have 2 years of runway, you might be hoping, okay, I've got 1 year of runway, but Picasso market's going to go strong again, but like it might not. And the only thing that you can control is your own profitability. And sometimes that means hiring less aggressively to hit that goal versus, all right, I'm going to intentionally burn more money to build a bigger company in the end. But sometimes you just have to, you have to make things last a little bit longer with what you have.
Are there any other key pieces of advice in addition to the 2 years of runway that you think are apt, particularly right now?
I mean, I think, again, it's really situationally dependent. I mean, like the unfairness of these situations when they happen is I have one company that I work with that grew extraordinarily last year, thought about raising money in October, November, decided not to because they're going to have such a great Q4, which they did. They had an amazing Q4. And it's like, like there's this expression like, show me, don't tell me. It's like, hey, it's much better if I'm showing you these amazing financials versus telling you I'm going to achieve them. But then the market totally cratered. Again, growing quickly, but the appetite for that company is zero versus other companies where it's like not growing that quickly, just happened to raise money in October of 2021. They don't actually have product market fit. That's not good. But they have almost infinite cash. Like, which one of those would you rather be? And the advice that you give to both of those companies is completely different. Because for the company that has extraordinary product market fit that would like to grow faster but doesn't have capital and can't raise capital, I mean, the only advice is like, well, don't run out of money. Unfortunately, I wish there was, I mean, you can get a little bit more creative around, well, maybe you can raise debt, maybe you can do this, you can do the other thing, versus the company that kind of has almost infinite runway but no product, which normally is a bad position to be in, but in a market where cash is hard to come by, that's a pretty good position to be in. But you can't get, like, the worst thing to do there is to be aggressive. Now, the best situation is where you have lots of cash and you've got something really working and there's a market pullback where you can be hyper aggressive. And that's where sometimes amazing companies are built. But there's a saying, what is it? I'm gonna mangle this a little bit, but bad companies are destroyed in crisis. Good companies are improved in crisis, and great companies are like dramatically improved during crisis. So sometimes, or maybe I think it was bad companies fail during crisis. Good companies do fine during crisis, and great companies improve during crisis. It's kind of the definition of anti-fragility. And I think there will be some companies that actually come out this a lot stronger, but there are going to be some almost unfair victims along the way, where it's the unluck of the draw, where you didn't time your capital markets needs correctly, not because you did anything wrong, but it's just like you never know where these things are going to go.
I mean, besides cash availability, are there other areas where you feel like there will be kind of opportunities, depending on how long this persists?
It's really hard to say. I mean, I think if you look at 2008, 2009, that was a period of just massive, amazing company creation. I mean, so you've got Instagram, Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, Instacart, like you can come up with so many. And the two things that this period of time had in common, or not in common, but the two attributes is that, number one, it was at the trough of an investment cycle. Because you kind of have financial cycles where, going back to the 1500s or probably even before, it's like you have ups and downs and kind of like, growth followed by correction. And that's been going on for centuries. And then you have product cycles. And the two don't actually have that much to do with each other. So, and this is a framework that I'm stealing from one of my partners, Chris Dixon. He has a great blog post on this. If you just Google, Dixon product cycles versus financial cycles, he describes it pretty well. But financial cycles just allow you to hopefully pay less for an asset and pay more when the financial cycle recovers. But product cycles are where you really win. And like the reason why there were so many great companies forged out of 2009 was not the financial cycle that we were in, which was very bad. It means that I believe the seed round of Airbnb was at 2.4 million pre, something like that. So Sequoia invested $600,000 at a $3 million post-money valuation. That's pretty good. Now, let's just say that they had done the same deal at 10 times the price. I mean, it still would have been an amazing return. Like Airbnb built a great company. But the reason why Airbnb worked is because, amongst other things, the iPhone had come out. That was the product cycle. So mobile telephony, early smartphones, that was 2007. And that was the beginning of a mega cycle on the product side. The biggest one before that was probably social, right? Or kind of Web 2.0, where like the web used to be a read-only apparatus. I mean, you'd send email, I guess that was writing, but you would just read things on the internet. You weren't actually building things and creating content, or it was rather hard to do. So Facebook was social media. That was another product cycle. Like Zynga was built on that product cycle. Like lots of products, I mean, BuzzFeed, all sorts of like media consumption expanded during that product cycle. The last one before that was the internet. Where amazing companies were like Amazon, that came out of that product cycle. The one before that was the personal computer. Microsoft, that came out of that product cycle, and so on and so forth. I mean, the railroads were a product cycle. Like, it was hard to transport things. You can't build an international business if you're a farmer, but whoa, the railroads come along, like that's a product cycle. So, I mean, the moral of the story is generally like to invest like crazy into new product cycles. I mean, I think the unknown now is like, what is the product cycle? Like maybe it's crypto. Maybe that's a product cycle. But I feel like just investing or kind of making company decisions based on where we are in a financial cycle is not nearly as exciting as are we going into a new product cycle. I mean, like, from my perception from the outside, the reason why Facebook is spending like crazy and changed their name to Meta is like they want to control an operating system, and it feels like, ooh, maybe VR AR is the next product cycle, and the last one was the mobile phone. So, but yeah, that's kind of my take on where things are.
Do you feel like, broadly speaking, kind of the digitization of financial solutions is still a product cycle like that? Because I know from a Plaid perspective, it feels like that's a wave we've been riding for quite some time. And when we got started, it was more serving a lot of the great fintechs that you talked about, the Coinbases, the Venmos, et cetera, of the world. And we continue to grow with them, but we've also now, we have a lot of the big institutions as customers. We have a lot of the big tech players who are building embedded financial solutions as customers. And so, I mean, one of the things I've even just seen in my last, 4 years at Plaid is that proliferation of solutions, like across all types of customers, right? Where we have John Deere as a customer, for example, where if you would have told me when I first joined that John Deere was going to be one of our key customers, I would have been like, I don't really see the connection. And here we are, right? But they're so well positioned to be able to bring these amazing solutions to their customer base that it gives us an opportunity to kind of help them on that journey as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like it's not a financial services is not a product cycle from a platform perspective, right? It's not like, ooh, financial services didn't exist before, now it does, in the way that the iPhone didn't exist before, but now it does. But I 100% agree. It's kind of like cloud is the best example there, right? Where uh, another product cycle, but kind of more from a not from a consumer perspective, but like the back end guts that enable lots of things to be built very quickly was AWS, and the transition to cloud. And then a lot of products could be improved if they switched to cloud. So you had like, PeopleSoft was the HR product that everybody, HR departments around the world used on-premise software. You paid millions of dollars for it up front. And then Workday came along as a cloud-enabled version of that. And I think you kind of have two different things happening in financial services. One, and they're both enabled by effectively the turnkey nature of like now you can access things that used to be very, very complicated, which is courtesy of my counterparty here with Plaid. But they're somewhat different, right? So what I mean by that is like embedded financial services, like wow, this is like a business model that we should now pursue because that's partially enabled by cloud. Like there's a dental practice management solution. I love this term, but like it turns out like how does we just talked about Toast for restaurants. Well, Toast doesn't work for dentists. Like how does a dentist run his or her practice? They run it on Dentrix, which has like 100,000 dentists. They also do payment processing for dentists. They also do payment plans for patients of dentists powered by Synchrony's Care Credit product, et cetera, et cetera. But because it's a cloud-enabled software application, they can just push out these financial services very, very readily to either the dentist or the patient. And this idea of embedded financial services is, I mean, it's a mega, almost monetization cycle, right? It's like you have all of these companies, or like PoolTrack. I love this one. PoolTrack is for pool maintenance companies. So if you're a pool maintenance company, how do you keep track of your clients and show up like, oh, I have to go to this pool at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. I need to buy more chlorine, and here's the supplier. I need to charge this person $20. That's PoolTrack. And it's like you have so many of these companies that have popped up. ServiceTitan has hundreds of millions of dollars of ARR, but they're really like, they would not have been good businesses 10, 15 years ago, but now that they're cloud enabled, not bad businesses, but it's like how big is the market? How many dentists will pay you $20 a month? Well, it's not the $20 a month that you're getting paid by the dentist. It's the fact that all these other financial services that you can bundle in, they increase the opportunity size by like 100x. And that's what makes that very, very exciting. And then to the thing that you mentioned at first as well, it's like, just like the on-prem to cloud, it's like, well, I don't want, there are two things that are happening there if I divide that up. Number one, I don't want to go to a bank branch to do everything. And I have a joke that I used to make, which is if you're under the age of 30, you know what the least used app on your phone is? It's the phone app where you talk to somebody, right? Like, so for my parents, they want to talk to a human. They would not switch to a financial institution they did not have like an in-person branch with an in-person human that they could talk to. If you're under 30, you probably want the opposite of that. So the bank branch is an anachronism for a huge chunk of the population. Like it should be mobile based. And then there's this idea of like everything was bundled together under the sun, and maybe you should actually have like 8 different apps that manage different parts of your financial services needs. And then each one of those 8 different apps wants to rebundle other things under their own name, right? So like both of those are kind of super cycles that are happening right now, enabled by, I mean, partially I think it's the trust that you guys have created for the industry, because there are certain industries that are just hard to get off the ground without a certain level of consumer trust. And the example that I always give somewhat jokingly is when I was growing up as a kid, probably you as well, Eric, I was told by my parents never to get into a car with a stranger who offered me candy. And then Uber came along, and I took an Uber back from the airport yesterday, and it was driven by a stranger who offered me candy. And I ate the candy, and I'm still alive to do this presentation. So it was neither kidnapping nor murder. But 20 years ago, that's just kind of crazy. You need a friend to tell you this is safe. And I mean, remember phishing attacks, right? It's like never give your Bank of America password to anybody. But I know if it's Plaid, if I see, okay, Plaid, I know that Plaid is safe. I've done this before, just like I've taken an Uber before. This is a behavior that I know I can trust. And that probably wasn't the case 15, 20 years ago. Like consumers, like how many people have a Venmo account? You don't have a Venmo account unless you've gone through a Plaid experience, and people get this now. So it just has made the acclimation process to the 21st century of this platform shift, or whatever we want to call it, it's accelerated it. So it took a long time for people to try their first Uber, if you will. Took a long time for people to try their first Plaid experience, or an experience that you obviously power behind the scenes, even if people didn't realize it at the time. And then they realized, oh, actually Venmo's good. I like Venmo. I use Venmo all the time. I now understand that I can interact with, like I'm buying a Tesla now. Oh yeah, it's totally normal to go log in with my bank credentials in order to buy my car. Whereas 15 years ago, like if you said, okay, in order to buy your Toyota, you have to like go to this other website that makes you enter your password. It's like, oh, that sounds kind of strange. And that's just become such a mainstream consumer process right now. People have internalized it, and then that's reduced the friction, which actually, going back to the distribution point, has made it much, much easier to acquire customers. Because if you get 1 million downloads, and then 999,000 of them like gets, the crap is scared out of them by like page 1 saying like, connect your Vanguard account, like, ooh, I don't want to do that. And now it's like, oh yeah, that's totally normal.
No, that definitely resonates. I mean, I know it sometimes for me, I feel like it's very advantageous because I tend to call people a lot. And I do find that the people under 30 answer much faster than they used to, but only because they're scared and they think it's an emergency. I mean, every time like, you call them and they're like, what's the matter? You know, versus obviously if you text them, it takes a little more.
Indeed.
Just a few questions here at the end. I mean, one is obviously you've worked with a lot of amazing founders. I would love to just hear some stories with how you got started with Zach and William back in the early days of Plaid.
Well, this is a very sad story for me, so I'm almost embarrassed to admit it or tell it. So I met, so 2 ways. So one, I had this company called TrialPay, and TrialPay, we put ads around transactions. So like if you played a Zynga game, you could get your Farmville coins, Farmville was a Zynga game, Farmville coins for free if you sign up for Netflix, or if you get a Discover card or shop at the Gap. Like we basically use the affiliate dollars to power payments. And you know, we built a pretty good business, and one of our business lines was surveys. So hey, get your Zynga coins for free if you answer a survey from Procter & Gamble, like, do you like Tide detergent, yes or no, or whatever it was. But we had about a $10 million a year business putting surveys in front of people in exchange not for cash, because how are you going to get 10 cents of cash to somebody? It's like, oh, they just want like Farmville coins, or like you downloaded some iPhone game, you can get something in the app for free if you go answer the survey. And I had this idea of like, hey, you know, these surveys might be better and more real if we were actually able to get their transaction history. Because if you think about it, like I'm going and shopping at Chipotle, imagine that I never go to Chipotle again. Chipotle actually had like a big, I don't know if it was E. coli, but some like terrible bacterial outbreak or something in 2013 or 14, and like sales plummeted. So Chipotle knew that their sales were down, but where were those people shopping thereafter? Like that would be really useful to know. It's like, okay, I asked somebody to go complete my survey, like what do you think about Chipotle? Do you like our guacamole? Do you order chips? Whatever it is that they want to ask. But then number one, validate that the person actually shopped at Chipotle. Then number two is track their transaction history, again, with their permission for the future, and then ask them surveys thereafter. It's like, hey, it's like the Nielsen survey of old, right? Like you used to, like Nielsen would actually sign up families. There were people that were very proud to be Nielsen families, and they would not just allow their TV watching habits to be recorded, but would answer questions to the Nielsen Corporation and people that wanted to query them. So this was a product that we built within TrialPay. We spun it out as TXN, but like, how do we get this transaction data? Am I allowed to say bad things about your competitors, by the way, or no? Okay, so we started off like, it's like, okay, how do we do this? Like, let's call this company Yodely, but it's just like, oh, it was so painful working with them. And it's like, it was terrible. And then we found this like little unknown company. We said, again, I think this was like 2014, called Plaid. I thought it was actually pronounced Plaid, but you know, Plaid. And because it's like, oh, that's an interesting name for a company. The engineer who was working on it was like dealing, I think, directly with William. And it's like, wow, this is really good. It's actually like, it's much, much better. It allowed us to get this product called TXN off the ground. And then TXN, ironically, was acquired by Envestnet, which is Yodely. But long story. I started working at Andreessen Horowitz in 2015, and then kept in touch with Zach, and I was not smart enough to go. I mean, I wanted to go invest in the B round, and he wanted a higher price than I was willing to pay, and I won't say what that number was, but it was very, very low relative. It was like $100 million versus $105 million or something stupid. I still have the whole email thread on this. And we kind of stayed in touch, and then Plaid was raising money next time around, and I was like, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, and we committed big and have been partners ever since. And actually, I found that old, this is why I said it was a sad story. I found the old email thread where it was like this price versus that price, where both the prices were very, very small. And I said, I'm sorry I got it wrong last time, but happy to get it right this time, and have been very proud partners ever since.
What an amazing story. I think we'll end it there. I really appreciate you spending the time and sharing your insights today. So thank you for coming and making the time for not just myself, but everybody here at Platform as well. Thank you, Alex.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.